I'm going to order this hearing. This is a hearing of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Monday, April 25th, 2022. The time is 5:18 in the afternoon. I apologize for starting this hearing a little bit late, as in 3 hours later than we had hoped, because we've had 3 other hearings, one of which had 40 witnesses more than we expected when we had issued the notice at the beginning of April. The subject of this hearing is Bill 24-526, entitled the Engineering Licensure Amendment Act of 2021. This hearing is actually a reconvening of a hearing that we began or tried to begin on February 24th. And we had to reschedule that. I think we called the hearing to order and recessed it on February 24th because the preceding hearing went on for many hours longer. This hearing concerns Bill 24-526. The purpose of the bill is to clarify the scope of the practice of engineering with respect to consultants, officers, or employees of the district government or an independent agency of the District of Columbia, and to make a conforming amendment to a provision in the code. The record in this matter will close at 5 p.m. on Monday, May 9th. We have 3 witnesses who I'm going to invite in. Keisha Powell, who's Chief Operating Officer with DC Water. Tom Cohn, who's Executive Director of the Washington Area Council Engineering Laboratories. And Hugh Cannon, who's with the American Council of Engineering Companies of Metropolitan Washington. After I hear from the 3 of them, we will hear from 2 government witnesses with regard to this legislation. Let's begin with, is it Keisha Powell? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson. It's Keisha Powell.
Keisha, okay, the I is,
yes.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Please proceed.
Thank you, and good afternoon again, Chairman Mendelson, members of the Committee of the Whole, and staff. I am Keisha Powell, Chief Operating Officer of DC Water and a District of Columbia licensed professional engineer. Most notably, I am a practitioner who strongly believes, as I believe we all do, in the need to preserve the high standards of engineering practice, as well as the practicality of maintaining a pathway for licensure and the need for equity. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony before you today on behalf of DC Water in support of the intent of Bill 24-526, the Engineering Licensure Amendment Act of 2021. DC Water is a regional water and wastewater utility with a service area that spans 725 square miles, serving 2 million people each day in the District of Columbia and jurisdictions in Maryland and Virginia. As part of our responsibilities, we manage and maintain $7.5 billion in critical infrastructure assets, including Blue Plains, the largest advanced wastewater treatment facility in the world, and over 3,000 miles of water and sewer pipe. As Chief Operating Officer, I have the honor of serving with a team of professionals across our operating cluster, whose primary objective is assuring the reliability of the services DC Water provides. In part, we accomplish this through the implementation of our $6.4 billion capital improvement program, with over 200 planned projects that have a direct and vital impact on the quality of life for all of those we serve. Apologies. Our operating and engineering teams, who hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public, are comprised of frontline operational staff as well as dedicated engineering and construction management professionals, inclusive of 54 District of Columbia licensed professional engineers, 6 professional engineers with out-of-state licensure, 10 engineers in training, and non-licensed individuals who have opportunities to engage in our ongoing projects, performing functions that are included in the definition of the practice of engineering. DC Water supports the proposed amendments to Bill 24-526 insofar as it allows for equity in our existing and future workforce. Notably, where those who may not have a college education but have the experience, fully understand the work and the intricacies of the systems and infrastructure assets we manage, will be able to participate in career tracks that involve the practice of engineering. This is with the full understanding that only licensed professional engineers can work independently, sign, seal, and serve as the engineer in responsible charge. Even as COO, I must limit the use of my professional engineering credentials in areas where I do not have the competence or have not provided the requisite oversight to be in responsible charge. However, it is vital that DC Water remain an anchor institution in the community, not only offering job opportunities for experienced district licensed professional engineers, but also provide career tracks for graduates of the 3 District of Columbia Public School STEM high schools. DC Water support, including the following provisions. Ensure that the legislative language is consistent with the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs requirements for graduates of accredited engineering programs to gain the required years of experience under the responsible charge of a District of Columbia licensed engineer. An allowance for non-engineers such as construction inspectors, technicians with a high school diploma, and interns to perform some functions included in the definition of the practice of engineering under the responsible charge of a District of Columbia licensed professional engineer. In closing, it is said that policies reflect the values of the people that are in power. We believe the proposed amendments to the current law reflect the values of this council and the constituencies it serves. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. We look forward to continuing to work with the council on the passage of this bill, as well as with other district agency partners. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. So you're in support of the bill, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're not proposing any changes to the bill?
Well, our Department of Legal and Government Affairs are actually working with staff members to make changes to the language in the bill to make sure that that is consistent with the requirements. But overall, we do support the intent of the bill to allow for individuals who may not have matriculated from a 4-year institution to continue or to engage in project activities and certain functions that are considered the practice of engineering, and also making sure that there is provision for graduates of ABET accredited schools who were educated as engineers to gain the required experience to become a licensed professional engineer.
Okay, but the bottom line is that this is where I wrote it down, that you support the bill, but that DC Water's attorneys are giving us edits.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Okay, and I don't have a copy of your statement.
I'm sorry, we'll make sure you have a copy of the statement. I thought that it was sent this morning.
Yeah, we don't see it. I'm looking at my staff. If you could resend it, I'd appreciate it.
We sure will. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Cohn.
Thank you, Chairman Mendelson, council members, and staff. My name's Tom Cohn, and I serve as the executive director of WASL. WASL is a nonprofit association of engineering laboratories, inspection agencies, and building officials that represent more than 60 engineering offices in the District of Columbia and the surrounding metropolitan area. We thank you for this opportunity, what we view as an effort to help preserve and protect public health and safety that we believe will be compromised, if not severely jeopardized, if this bill passes. WASL members perform almost all of the special inspections in the District of Columbia. Special inspections are a third-party inspection mandated by the DC Construction Code, DCRA, and the International Building Code. Special inspections are required by code to be performed by licensed professional engineers because those services require engineering education, judgment, and expertise. The District of Columbia's Special Inspection Manual defines special inspections as the monitoring of certain materials critical to the integrity of the building structure. It is a specialized inspection of certain complex construction to help ensure that the building is being constructed in accordance with approved plans and specifications and relevant codes and reference standards. Special inspections safeguard public health and safety and general welfare by applying the expertise of a licensed professional engineer to verify the integrity of structural and fire systems and other critical materials and components. So if anyone remembers the Hyatt Kansas City, those walkways collapsed because they didn't inspect the structural components properly. So this gives you an idea why engineering expertise is needed. The only individuals that DC and the International Building Code deem are qualified and therefore legally required to verify these critical building components are licensed professional engineers. This is the reason why it is mandated by IBC, DCRA, and every other jurisdiction in the United States that special inspection services must be performed by a licensed professional engineer or licensed geologist. DC code also requires a professional engineer to stamp and seal the final report of third-party special inspections, which is a prerequisite to obtaining a certificate of occupancy in the District of Columbia. Licensed professional engineers are duty-bound and legally obligated, first and foremost, to protect public health, safety, and welfare. That duty is exchanged for the license to practice engineering. Additionally, professional engineers agree to a code of ethics that require them to perform services only in their area of competence, to be objective and truthful, and act for each employer and client as a faithful agent or trustee, and to conduct themselves ethically and lawfully. Ethics are required for licensure and license renewal. The Engineering Licensure Amendment Act of 2021 would eliminate the legal and ethical obligations to protect public health and safety and the welfare of the people that licensed professional engineers are legally mandated to follow. The amendment would increase the district's own liability by eliminating a safeguard that DCRA and the entire construction industry acknowledged as necessary. We do not believe that the district would change the definition of medical practice to allow an unlicensed individual to perform surgery. We do not believe that the District of Columbia would allow someone who did not pass the bar to practice law. While there may be individuals that claim to have experience and qualifications to perform third-party inspections, there are also a number of people who claim they know how to drive a car. Would the district change the requirement for a driver's license to satisfy that group? There's a reason for licensing. We ask who is to benefit from DC changing the definition of engineering to allow unlicensed professionals to provide engineering services and at what cost? Thank you for this opportunity. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Hugh Cannon.
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mendelson and council members. Thank you for the opportunity today to talk to you about this bill. I am Mac Cannon, the president of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Metropolitan Washington. ACEC is the national trade association representing consulting engineering firms from across the country. ACC Metropolitan Washington is the regional member organization of that federation and was founded here in the district in 1958. We represent over 100 firms with 4,700 employees in the DC area, 850 of those working in over 40 offices within the boundaries of the District of Columbia. As I said, we are the voice of the engineering businesses in the region and have many solid relationships with public agencies. Furthermore, our strategic goals are to educate, engage, and advocate on behalf of our industry with the aim to serve as a resource to you on infrastructure challenges that needs facing our shared communities. We have submitted detailed written testimony back in February previous to this to the council and would like to highlight some of our thoughts on the legislation for you now. The terms engineer, professional engineer, and the practice of engineering are very important to us as professionals and carry with them a certain expectation of that professionalism and due diligence before the law. When there are potential changes to their definition, exclusion, or inclusion in such law, we want to offer our clear position. Here are some important reasons for our position to the legislation as currently written. First, we support legislation that requires an engineer in responsible charge that they must be a licensed professional engineer. Second, we acknowledge and support the premise that construction management and inspection services do not require someone to be an engineer or a licensed professional engineer, with the exception of special inspections policy that follow the International Building Code, which directly stipulates the requirement of a registered professional engineer. Next, we do not support the legislation that proposes that construction management and inspection services are not a part of the practice of engineering. Lastly, we do not support legislation that attempts to define the practice of engineering as only being performed by a licensed professional engineer. This practice of engineering is performed daily by engineers that have graduated from accredited colleges and universities under the direction and supervision of a responsible charged licensed professional engineer. What we do is innovate, create, and build the future to support the life and safety of the people that come in contact with and are affected by our designs. I think you would likely agree with me that the importance of engineers and the implicit value of their engineering practice. We work to improve communities, to keep people safe, to protect the environment, to prevent infrastructure failures like the Surfside collapse in Miami last June, Fern Hollow Bridge collapse in Pittsburgh this past January, and the ongoing preventative work with the Roosevelt Bridge and other structures vital to the district. These are important instances to address, especially ahead of the upcoming influx of IIJA funding. ACCMW welcomes the opportunity to work with the DC Council to develop legislation that supports the practice of engineering and goals of the council for the betterment of the lives of the constituents of this fine city. Thank you very much. And that completes my comments. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. So I'm a little bit confused. That could be because I got a little bit distracted. Mr. Cannon, you don't support the legislation, but you would be supportive of accommodations to officers and employees of the district government.
I think that's fair. That's fair to say. The way that it's written now, the problem that we have is those three terms that I mentioned. So I'll do air quotes: engineering, professional engineers, professional engineers, and practice of engineering. As we said, when the definition before or after that within the legislation changes the focus of what the requirement is, that's our concern. As an example would be, when you have inspections, we don't believe that there needs to be a registered engineer that necessarily needs to be in charge of that, because as I know from the members in my association, there's a lot of great work that is done by engineers who don't have the PE. However, everything filtrates up to the responsible charge. So to be specific to your question, we understand the impetus of the bill from 2017, it being amended in 21 and where it stands now. And we don't have a problem with that, but we want to make sure that from the industry out here, there aren't unintended consequences for doing business with the district, and then I would say our co-partners that we work with at the agencies in the district to complete these projects and deliver them to the public.
Well, I'm looking at the bill. The bill would add language that says, notwithstanding a previous section, the term practice of engineering shall not include the inspection and review of construction by a consultant, officer, or employee of the district government or an independent agency. So the district government could be, for example, the Department of Environment, and an independent agency, for example, could be DC Water. Mm-hmm. And I get that a consultant would be a private sector, a third party, if you will. And so that might raise a concern. But if we took consultant out, it would be officer, employee of the district government. The language goes on and it says, for purposes of monitoring compliance with drawings and specifications in connection with any utilities, structures, buildings, machines, equipment. That looks like that's pretty broad: buildings, machines, equipment, processes, etc. But then it says, for conformance with plans and designs approved by a District of Columbia professional engineer licensed pursuant to the code. So the bill is limited to inspection and review of construction. I get that the language could be tightened, but it's sounding like we could be just limiting this to the government, and it could just be, and it is just inspection and review of plans that have already, for conformance with plans that have been approved by a licensed engineer. That doesn't sound like that's a problem.
No, I would say the way that you couched it just there is not.
I realize it's the way I couched it, and that's not necessarily the language,
Sure.
but that's what the hearing's about.
Yeah, no. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing that. With your staff and conversations we had previous to this, we had a group of folks within the organization that got together on this that have done work with the district for years, that are residents of the district, and the concern they had was not so much like I said, the impetus to take that word again of this being brought forward and started, but wanting to make sure that as it's executed, it's correct. So if you're asking me specifically, are we against the bill? No, with the caveat, much like what Ms. Powell said in regards to the definitions of it, and I think there's definitely some edits we can provide that I think might be helpful with some explanation in the specific parts of it. I don't have it chapter and verse right now to present to you. I know in my written testimony, which is about 4 pages, what I presented to you this evening is about 2.5. There's a lot more specifics that are laid out in there, kind of drilling directly down to maybe what you're getting to. But again,
Yes.
I'm happy to answer what I can. I'm also happy to reach back out and make sure that we get our folks in touch with you and your staff to see exactly what we're speaking of. But there's still this concern of the ramifications with that. And I guess the last thing I'd add is it's not necessarily our concern from a consulting engineering industry standpoint, but also how the projects are concerned looking at the other side of the aisle. So when we're working with public entities and making sure that we're meshing with their staff to make sure that there's folks on that other side, staff-wise, who are able to execute what needs to be done for the projects. And that's a little bit of our concern too, is this may limit them on being able to have the right personnel and resources to carry that out, which again, in turn would affect us, if that helps.
Well, I'm going to take you up on your offer. Do reach out to my staff, Blaine Stum.
Absolutely.
I work with him on this. So, Mr. Cohen.
Yes, sir.
There you are.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sir.
Okay. You don't seem to be as flexible.
I'm sorry.
You don't seem to be as flexible. I know that sounds horrible the way.
Well, I didn't mean to come across as that. My concern is with the language. Our concern is with the language. When you say third parties were allowed to perform engineering service, as you Cannon pointed out, special inspections is what my members specialize in and literally perform probably 98% of the special inspections in the District of Columbia. That's a different type of third-party inspection, and that is not excluded in, I think, the language of the bill, which I believe if it was, we wouldn't have an issue with it insofar as Mr. Cannon's other concerns would be addressed. But special inspections, to allow someone who is not a licensed engineer to perform them or report to an engineer in responsible charge that is the engineer of record, we would have a big problem with, simply because there is a certain degree of engineering education, experience, and expertise that is required to perform those inspections. So that's where our issue is the language is not clear on what limitations there would be in terms of what the type of third party who could perform these inspections.
Yeah, the bill itself doesn't say third party, but it does say review, inspection and review of construction by a consultant. So I guess that would be a third party. Inspection and review of construction by an officer or employee of the district government or an independent agency. And I'm assuming that wouldn't be a third party.
No, an independent agency of the district government is part of the district government. It's just
Yeah.
an independent agency. I was more concerned with the other third party consultants.
The consultant, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we have partnered with DCRA. We crafted the special inspections manual with DCRA for many years. So we've worked closely with Garrett and his team down there and his predecessors as well. So, we are familiar with their operations and procedures. And I just, not having a specific limitation is where it causes us heartburn, simply because someone could take the language of the law and say, here, I don't have to be an engineer to do this.
Well, that's the purpose of the hearing, is to see where we need to tighten the legislation. Ms. Powell, do you have a reaction to what folks are saying?
Yes, a few things, Chairman Mendelson, and thank you. Perhaps it may help to include some language that refers to adhering to the Code of Engineering Ethics, which specifically states that only engineers can perform certain tasks within their realm of competence. And certainly, as I said in my testimony, myself as an engineer, a District of Columbia licensed engineer, even for my own staff, I do not serve as the engineer of record or in responsible charge of our projects, because I am not intimately familiar with all of the project details. And that's not something that I or anyone else should do. But what we see in the definition of the practice of engineering is terms like participating in studies and doing certain surveys. It doesn't say specifically what surveys, but we understand that engineering technicians who are not licensed engineers can certainly do things like sanitary sewer evaluation surveys, where they are out doing inspections of the collection system. They are looking at or collecting data for the engineers to use to perform designs. And they are participating or carrying out certain tasks that are in the definition of engineering, but they are not serving as the responsible engineer in charge. This would be akin to legal interns or paralegals or legal secretaries who are considered highly valuable members of legal teams, but they are not qualified themselves as lawyers, but they are doing similar work to gather information, to gather data, pulling case law and contributing to the effort, but they don't themselves then go try the case. And so what we're saying here is, as Mr. Cannon said, construction inspections does not necessarily require a licensed professional engineer, nor do many of the tasks that go into project implementation.
Chairman Mendelson, I don't think you have to change the definition of engineering to meet what Ms. Powell has suggested, because that's just common practice today. So I can't see, there are non-engineers in the field providing construction observation and testing services that report to an engineer in responsible charge. That's part of common practice today. So I don't know if the law needs to be changed to meet what Ms. Powell is suggesting, because that's common practice already.
Yeah, but I think the bill goes a little bit further to say inspect and review for conformance to plans.
That's an engineering service.
Yeah. And I think that's what the issue is here. This came to us because apparently in 2017, or no, excuse me, in 2019. You wrote down 2015. In 20, somewhere around 2017, we adopted Bill 21-279 called the Professional Engineers Licensure and Regulation Clarification Act, which apparently removed an exemption for district government employees. And so now we're trying to fix that. I appreciate that we did a clarification act that we now have to clarify. I don't think I have any other questions for y'all. Please work with Blaine Stumma and my staff, because we're probably going to do something, but I want to make sure that what we do is right. And your testimony has been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Appreciate it.
We
Yes.
appreciate it as well, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, each of you. I'm going to now turn to the government. So the witness list has Tommy Wells, the Director of Department of Energy and Environment, and Meredith Upchurch, who's Associate Director at the Department of Energy and Environment. And I'm told that Ms. Upchurch, you are maybe the only one from DOEE.
Oh, is Director Wells not on?
You want to text him and say, where the hell are you?
I had anticipated he would be giving this testimony.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm told that you just ran into the room.
Excellent.
Excuse me, Chair, but were you swearing? I mean, this is a public hearing. I'm not sure. Is this a public hearing, sir?
Not only is it a public hearing, but if you want, I'll swear you in.
Okay. Do you know the words?
Do you swear or affirm? I believe I have a copy of your statement. Do you want to begin?
Yes, I do. I'm looking here. You've had a lot of hearings today.
Yes, and I apologize that this hearing was supposed to start a couple hours ago.
Yeah, no, I think it was a couple weeks ago, if I remember right. But that's all right. You know, here in the executive branch, we are here to serve. And it's our pleasure to be available to the legislative branch whenever you summon us. So with that, Mr. Mendelson, and I know that you have met Meredith Upchurch. And so with that, let me just say good afternoon. And I'm Tommy Wells, Director of the Department of Energy and Environment. Pronouns that I use are he, him. Today, we acknowledge the indigenous people that originally occupied the land on which we work and live. The District of Columbia occupies the unceded ancestral land of the Nacotchtank, the sacred site of the Nagastine and Anacostia people, and the unceded ancestral land of the Piscataway people. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony before you today on Bill 24-526, the Engineering Licensure Amendment Act of 2021. The bill clarifies the scope of the practice of engineering with respect to consultants, officers, or employees of the district government or an independent agency of the District of Columbia, as well as the practice of engineering in the private sector. Engineers play a vital role in the development and function of the district's built environment. DOEE employs 31 engineers that ensure construction and development is conducted in accordance with the district's regulations to protect public health, welfare, and safety, and the natural environment. DOE supports the intent of Bill 24-526 and the need to enforce high standards that have been put in place across the nation to ensure that qualified individuals are performing engineering functions, and only licensed professional engineers can sign, seal, and take responsibility for designs requiring a permit. The current law is not consistent with engineering practice or other states in following ways. Graduates of accredited engineering programs cannot directly or indirectly practice engineering in the district without a professional engineer license, although you need a minimum of 4 years of experience to be eligible for the license. Second, engineers without a professional engineer license are not allowed to use the term engineer in their title. Engineers that are licensed in other states are not allowed to utilize reciprocity to obtain a license in DC. Under current law, DC agencies, including DOEE, have had difficulty filling engineering positions that do not directly require a PE license. According to the DC Department of Human Resources, agencies are not allowed to hire staff into engineering positions without a PE license. Additionally, because DCHR requires positions with engineering title to have a PE license, engineers in training are not allowed to work in an engineering position to gain required work experience, which does not make sense. And DOEE is forced to recruit for entry-level engineers without calling them engineers. Lastly, current law would prohibit non-licensed engineers from performing engineering work, either directly or indirectly, even if they're supervised by a licensed engineer. DOEE supports Bill 24-526 because it addresses the shortcomings in the current law. District licensed engineers can supervise unlicensed engineers in the practice of engineering. Professional engineers licensed in other states may present themselves as a professional engineer so long as they use or indicate the other jurisdictions in which they're licensed. Additionally, graduates of an accredited engineering program may use the term engineer in their title. Notwithstanding the DOEE supported the bill, we'd like to recommend a few amendments that we believe would further enhance the district's ability to hire qualified engineers. The proposed legislation would add a new subsection B to 41-2853.131, which removes inspections from the scope of engineering practice. In contrast, the new 47-2853.133A3 would only allow non-licensed engineers who are consultants, officers, or employees of the district to perform inspections. Removing inspection work from the practice of engineering is inconsistent with nationwide practice. It will harm engineering graduates in both the public and private sector who enter the construction engineering field by not allowing them to gain engineering experience required for licensure. Instead of changing the definition of practice of engineering, DOEE recommends deleting subsection B for 41-2853.131 and amending 47-2853.133A3 to allow non-licensed engineers who have graduated from an accredited engineering program to practice under engineering under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer. Lastly, the district currently does not have reciprocity agreements with other states, and some experienced engineers licensed in other states have had difficulty becoming licensed in DC. We recommend that the bill allow a clear path for engineers licensed in good standing in other states to obtain a PE license. We look forward to working with the committee as it moves forward with this important legislation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Director Wells. We have, I believe, an attachment to your testimony, which is a red line with comments on the, I think it's more on the code than on the bill. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
We provided 2 sets of attachments, one red lines on the bill and another red lines on the code.
I see. That's very helpful to us. Did you hear the testimony of the previous witnesses, in particular, the Executive Director of the Washington Area Council of Engineering Laboratories and the American Council of Engineering Companies?
You know, Councilmember, I really thought this was the beginning of the hearing. So I apologize for missing that, but Ms. Upchurch may have.
Ms. Upchurch,
I did, yes.
do you want to respond to their concerns?
So I think generally all of our organizations want the same thing. We want standard industry practice to apply to district licensed engineers and unlicensed engineers. We want work that can be done by unlicensed engineers to be able to be performed under the the supervision, the responsible charge of a professional engineer. And we understand that there are certain activities that must be performed by a licensed engineer.
And
So I think we can all get to a consistent language agreement.
but Ms. Upchurch, our proposed red line takes care of that. I mean, the committee
Yes.
does not have to make up something new. I believe that our recommendation serves the District of Columbia so that we can all carry out our mission. So we're not asking you to do anything additionally, Mr. Chair.
Correct. I get that. So what we introduced as a bill doesn't have it quite right. But where there's a way to wordsmith all this so that not only is the government's interest improved, but or addressed, I'll say, but these are two associations, their concerns are addressed as well.
I'm not sure that they're fully addressed. I do know that we've been frustrating the private sector and many residents of DC by not having enough engineers. And you've heard that from DC Water, you heard that from DDOT. So I believe that our proposal to you protects the district, it protects the profession and enough so that we can be like other states to carry out the functions that we have. We don't believe districts should be an outlier in this.
Yeah. Give me just a second here. My staff is reminding me that we initially got a draft bill, which is what we moved. There's currently emergency legislation. And the draft that we initially got was much broader than than this introduced version that's being considered a little too broad. So just kind of interesting. We are going to, the emergency that we adopted, emergency and temporary expires next month. So we're going to have to renew the emergency. I don't know that we're going to be able to tighten it up quickly enough. But perhaps you all could look at it and maybe we could do some quick fixes so that the next round of emergency temporary is better. And then we can work on the permanent bill. Blaine Stum is the person on my staff who's handling this. So if you all would work with him.
Absolutely. We're happy to do that. And we have the capacity to propose new legislation, whatever you need, we can provide it, but absolutely.
I think all I need and maybe we have it now with your testimony, is enough in the way of some comments so that we can improve the next round of emergency.
Absolutely.
And the permanent, because my guess is we're not going to get to the permanent bill until you would understand this terminology, Mr. Wells, until the summer recess.
When you say until the summer recess, you mean you're not going to be able to work on it until the summer recess, so it cannot be fully dealt with or beginning, so it'll be brought up for a vote in September?
Could be.
Okay.
That's the permanent.
Yes.
We have to get the emergency and temporary. We have to renew that. So that'll be in the month of May, possibly May 5th.
We're happy to work with your staff to tweak that to the degree that you can.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add one comment. We were part of a team that did provide some input into the legislation and from the district agencies. And I think as we evolved and developed that language and then more conversations happened, there's just been a realization of some of the causes and effects of what's really happening. So I think everybody's learning a little bit more and seeing, what the best direction is to go to solve all the problems.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
Okay. I did have one other question that you may not be able to answer. The issue of reciprocity. So Mr. Wells, you mentioned that. This seems to be a problem across many professions. That the district does not recognize licenses from other states. Do you have any comment on that?
We used to be, as you know, under a federal regime, and like in law, for the most part, licensure in other states often generally would be recognized when we were an agency of the federal government. As you know, it's somewhat true for attorneys that work for the government. So I think that in some ways we're still have a legacy issue of how our licensure stuff has come about. You would know this really as well as me.
I hadn't thought of it that way, to tell you the truth, but that is helpful. I mean, I see it with other professions like electricians. That we don't, and the council passed legislation to make it easier for electricians who are licensed in another state to just transfer into the district. And it's the law, but the Board of Industrial Trades won't recognize it.
And as you know, the district is very dependent on our surrounding jurisdictions because we're not the size of a state. And so that does impede and undercut the ability for us to do our jobs.
Yeah. All right. I don't have any other questions for you all. Your testimony and your written comments in terms of the markup is helpful. Please work with my staff. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your patience.
Of course.
That I'm going to close out this hearing. This has been a hearing on Bill 24-526, the Engineering Licensure Amendment Act of 2021. The record will close at 5 p.m. on Monday, May 9th, 2022. The time is 6:05 in the